Greetings and welcome to BHU Live Streaming. I'm Dr. Siobhan Stewart, Director of Assessment and a member of the Business and Leadership Faculty. We are excited to be here today, and I have the privilege to share the stage with Dr. Evelyn Green, who is a part of our Religious Studies faculty as well. Today's topic is dealing with relevant leaders in their educational journey. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So Dr. Green, how relevant is it to be a leader in this generation?
I think leadership is extraordinarily important in our generation because there's so many different elements that are going on in our society that need to be addressed. And I think, and I'm looking at this from a religious studies perspective because that's my perspective. But when I look at it from the level or the aspect of leadership and ministry, I realize that it's so important for ministry leaders to be um, very cognizant of the social and political and various things that are going on in our country and to be able to address those issues from a faith-based perspective. And I think that is so important as far as leadership, particularly ministry leadership in this day and age.
I agree, and I think we both can relate because we both are in ministry and in the marketplace. And everything that we do in ministry should be able to be infused into the marketplace as well. And so that is how we can have an impact because we bring our faith within the marketplace and then we take what we see in the marketplace and hopefully we can have that positive impact. And when I think about positive impact, it's just bringing in those characteristics such as being that leader that inspires, that leader that motivates, that leader that encourages, because we're on that foundation of Christ. So, based on that, tell us a little bit about an experience of a leader that's been relevant, somebody that just really maybe even inspired you.
There are so many that I could name at this time, but I'm just going to narrow it down to a couple. Um, many years ago, I had an encounter. It's actually a prophetic encounter with a pastor, and this individual said to me, "You were made to stand out. Your voice is to be heard. You are to be a leader." That's sort of the gist of what he said. I don't even remember his name, but as an introvert, it terrified me at that time because as an introvert, I want to be behind the scenes in the background doing those kinds of things. But he very definitely impacted me. And then my current pastor, Bishop Jerry Hutchins, also inspired me very much. He actually was a professor of homiletics here at Beulah Heights University at one time some years ago. But he has the ability, first of all, he loves the word. Second of all, he has this innate ability to pull the most obscure passages of scripture and he can infuse it and make it so relevant. Passages that you've read that didn't even have any particular context to you, he can tell you what God was saying. And I said, if I want to be in his ministry and I want to teach and I want to help to minister to people, I need to educate myself. And so that was the catalyst that led me to Beulah Heights University, which completely changed the trajectory of my life, having received my Master of Divinity here. And then that took me on to Regent University where I got my PhD. But I feel like that those two people were hugely impactful, knowing that God wanted me to be a leader. And in order to be an effective ministry leader, I needed to educate myself so that I could be impactful. And then, of course, there's Dr. Brian Keith Hodges, who allowed me to be his teaching assistant here once I graduated. And that's led me to the position where I am now. So all three of those gentlemen in leadership positions absolutely changed the trajectory of my life.
That's awesome. And the key thing that she had individuals, so that shows you it takes somebody to help propel you to your next level. And she had three that she could mention. I'm sure she has dozens more
Absolutely.
that she could have included in her journey. And I can relate. Sometimes you're doing things you don't realize why you're doing it. And one thing I've always said about leadership, I believe we already have innate characteristics of leadership within us. God designed us this way. And it takes people like a Dr. Hodges and a Bishop Hutchins to help us blossom, to bloom, and to walk into that destiny that God has already preordained. And I can think for me, it would be Elder Barbara Jones. I remember at a time where I was hit by the market and I was able to volunteer in church full time and I volunteered in Christian ed. And from that point, I just began to take on tasks. She would ask me, well, are you open to doing this? And I said, oh, yes. Not thinking in myself that she's in the process of mentoring me and she's honing my skills as a leader. And to the point where I was the one training the new teachers that were coming into Christian education. And then when I heard the call from the Lord to be ordained, I said, okay, I walked into that calling. But when God told me, he said, you're going to train leaders, I said, okay, well, I was doing it, but I said, okay, it's something more he must want me to do. And I had my master's, and even my concentration was in leadership. So I said, okay, where can I go to get to the next level? And the next level would be a doctorate. And so I researched schools and I came back to BHU because their PhD in leadership aligned with my master's. And so I pursued it. And so I just want to encourage all those that are listening, pursue it. Whatever's in your heart, pursue that goal.
Absolutely. I felt the same way. And one of the things that stuck with me is, as I might have mentioned, there's a huge gap between my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. Big gap. I won't tell you how long it was. But when I did start in my master's program, the thing that impressed me so much is the day that I received my MDiv from BHU, there was a gentleman there who was 75 years old who was receiving his MDiv and his MA on the same day. So that just goes to show you that age makes absolutely no difference when you're actually pursuing those things that God has called you to do. And he still had the vigor and the ability and the willingness to learn. Because I think, Dr. Stewart, you have to be a lifelong learner in this journey. You can't ever become stagnated. You can't ever get to the point where you think you know everything. Because there's always going to be a revelation or an illumination that's out there. And you can find that through a good education, especially here at BHU. I can't tell you the things that I knew as a child and we grew up thinking that that was biblical, but it wasn't. And it was only through the educational process that we learned that it was tradition, it was not doctrine. And so those are the kinds of things that you can learn, because when you are ministering in any way, shape, or form, it's not just a matter of picking up a microphone and a Bible. If you don't have a good way of communicating it, and if you don't have a good educational background, it can completely ruin your testimony and the thought that you are impacting people. You have to know what you're talking about. And that's why a good education, whether it be secular or sacred, is so important. And you can receive a little bit of both if you are a student at Beulah Heights University.
And I agree. As you said, it's not about, it's what I look at it as when you're looking from a leadership perspective also. You want to be the change you want to see within your organization. And that's a Gandhi quote. So if you're not being that change, and it goes along with even if you're on the religious studies side, if you're not being that change, then you're not going to have that positive impact that you can have on an organization. So you have to look at it, be the change that you want to see within that organization. And you learn how to be that change, and you learn how to dispel those traditional thoughts, like you said, where, you know, as a child we were taught to say certain things, those cliches that I call them. And when you think about those cliches, I even said, well, where is it biblically? And when you realize, okay, this is not biblically sound, so we have to stop saying those things that are not biblically sound and live on doctrine and live on the theories that we learn in leadership. And that's how we're able to make that change. And the only way you can know is through your educational journey, reading. Like she said, being that lifelong learner. If you don't have the desire to learn, then you must be, in essence, dead. Because a lifelong learner is a person who either going to pick up a book, they're going to pick up an article, they're going to be in a mastermind group where they're around other people sharing ideas. And that's what keeps you relevant here in the 21st century.
Absolutely.
So, tell us once again why education can make a leader, in addition, any other things you want to add to being relevant in ministry.
Well, I think there are several things you can share as it relates to that. The first one is theological and biblical understanding. because as I said before, no matter how much you think you know, there's always more that you can learn. I think a good education is going to make you relevant, and knowing that the doctrines that you're teaching are sound, understanding the historical context of the word. Many times we don't understand the time in history in which the Bible was written. And there's some things that are in the Bible that were written for the people of that time. Not that they're not applicable to us today, but they're written specifically for that point in time. And so it's important to understand the historical context of that. I think when we're talking about a theological or biblical education and the relevancy, we have to also think about our critical thinking skills. We have to learn how to think critically. We don't necessarily have to take everything at face value. You need to look at an issue from several different angles to be able to have a thorough understanding of the issue that you're looking at. And I already talked a little bit about effective communication and leadership skills. Those things are important as well. A good communicator can pull you in from the very first sentence. And if you're not a good oral communicator, you lose your audience, and that's not something that we want to do. Having a good education here at Beulah Heights University, you're going to learn how to do that. We have classes specifically geared towards making good oral presentations, leadership classes here that are going to help you, as you mentioned before, not only as you become a leader and hone your own skills, but to be able to train others that are coming behind you. And one of the other things that I want to mention as it relates to the relevancy in ministry is that we are not ministering only to people who look like us, who speak like us, who come from our same communities. We have to begin to embrace the fact that there are other cultures out there and that there is a sense of diversity and inclusion that we have to include in our teaching as well. Gone are the days when you're only speaking to one group of people. We have at Beulah Heights University, one of the things I enjoy most is all of the students that I have represented in my classes who teach me something every single semester about their culture, and it helps me to teach them on a level that they can understand when I understand their culture. We have to take that into ministry as well. We have to understand that there's a lot of diversity out there, and we have to make sure that we are being inclusive as a result of that diversity. It's helpful to us because the Bible tells us to go ye into the world. We are to reach the nations. And in order to reach the nations, we have to understand all the cultures and the diversity that's out there. So I think those are some things, and we could go on and on. There are some things, maybe three things that I might have pointed out that are very important as it relates to relevancy in Christian education and in ministry.
And exactly what she explained, it goes on the marketplace side, being relevant, understanding culture. Like she said, we have a diverse student population. So in the classroom, we're dealing with different languages, different customs, different beliefs, and different values. But we should learn from one another, and we shouldn't look at one culture more superior than the other. But if we get to a place where we gain greater understanding of the culture, you can learn how to infuse it within the organization. And those types of organizations are the ones that will prosper. Those are the type of organizations that have great collaboration. They're innovative. And the way you learn how to do it is to be in a school environment where cultural diversity is there, where you can learn. Also, when I look at education from the perspective of the marketplace, it gives you that additional knowledge and expertise. I remember early on, rapper Jermaine Dupri made the comment was saying, you don't have to have a business degree to start a business. No, you don't have to have a business degree to start a business. But what value can that business degree bring to your business? It brings greater credibility. It brings respect. Of course, that knowledge, that expertise. And that way, when people see you, they not only see you as an entrepreneur, but they see you as a person who values education and sees that how that education has taken you to that next level. So I'm not saying education is not meant for everyone, but I encourage everyone. Education. Education is something as simple as reading a book, educating yourself on What are the key hot topics that's going on within the marketplace or as well as in the ministry? What are the concerns that need to be addressed? You need to be a part of those conversations so that when you are leading your organization, whether you're in ministry or in the marketplace, you have a greater understanding, a cultural awareness of what's going on within the world and it's in the complex. So let's get ready to wind down. And Dr. Green, I want you to give the people just three tips or advice on if they step out and make this education journey. Because some people may be like me, I was a non-traditional student. And when you're a non-traditional student, that means you're trying to come back into the education realm, balancing work and family. And then we have those who are fresh out of high school, they step out at 18, they're stepping into college. And that's a different type of mindset when you're fresh out of high school. So let's give our potential students three tips on how to make their education journey a success.
Okay, I would say one thing that was very interesting is I was teaching during the time of the pandemic, and we had to go from in-person classes to online classes. That was quite the challenge. We had some of our non-traditional students, the older students who were not accustomed to using the electronic devices or anything like that. Now, the younger people immediately grabbed a hold of it. The older people, they were like, I'm not going to come back until we get back into the classroom because this is too hard. But by the time I was able to encourage them through the semester, they were pros at it. And it's so refreshing when I go to graduation and I see them marching and it's like, see, you did it when you didn't think that you could. And so I guess that might be my first point. You can do it even when you don't think you can. And that especially for non-traditional students. I considered myself non-traditional because I was a full-grown adult when I got my master's degree. And I had a family, I had businesses, I had all those things going on. And so you have to also learn how to prioritize life. You have to provide. You have to learn how to balance yourself. You have to operate from a schedule. And if you operate from that schedule that you establish for yourself, and don't be too hard on yourself when you're doing that, because sometimes you're going to need to devote more time to family than to school, and it's okay. So I would say definitely make sure that you learn how to prioritize and bring balance to your life. And I think the third thing I would say is don't ever quit. Even when things get very difficult, even when you don't think you're going to be able to make it, I can't tell you how many times in my PhD program, if I had a towel, I would have thrown it in. And I mean, that's down to the last end of the program. I was ready to quit. But don't ever quit. Don't ever give up on your dreams. And if God has called you to this, I'm going to give you a church cliche, He will take you through this, right? So if you've been called to this, if you've been called to ministry, if you've been called to the marketplace or leadership, don't ever quit because God is going to sustain you through this process no matter how difficult it may become.
Awesome. Those tips are great. So I'm just going to piggyback off of it and say, remember your why.
Mm-hmm.
I got through my PhD journey without throwing in the towel because I remember my why. Why was I getting a PhD? And it was because I wanted to work in higher education. I wanted to be a professor. And because I remembered my why, I persevered, I leaned on the Lord, and I made it through. And just like she and I did, you can do the same. And so we just want to encourage you, if you have not done so already, registration open today for fall 2024. And we want you back here on campus. So if you are a first-time student, please reach out to our admissions department to go ahead and apply at BHU. If you are a returning student, maybe you're one of the ones who sat out during COVID because you didn't want to work through online learning. But look at here, we got multiple platforms now for our learning. Not only do we have online learning, we have face-to-face instruction as well. We have HighFlex. So we have every platform available to make your academic career a success. So we want you back as well. So we encourage you to reach out to our registrar department to get yourself re-enrolled back into one of our programs, whether it's on the religious studies side or the business and leadership side. Our advisors are here to help you make that transition be a success.